more food on the table. Not everybody's. Tonight we're headed into where Elaine works for our reunion banquet. Here we have a bunch waiting to go up for dinner. Nick and Kurt and Jean and Jim. Who else is over there? Julie, Al, Tracy.
Hi.
Those are like the basic. They just go straight down, and then they're like the ant, like even with the water. So you like slowly skim across the water for like 50 yards. So you always have raisins.
I mean, Mim was with them, you said, right?
Yeah.
With Jim and Rep?
Yeah. She had written down all the directions on a
What's
piece of paper.
radio station?
We have Lori and Joe and Pamela Turner. We have a bunch more kids. Chris and Jackie and Kelly and Megan and Sean. Okay, here we're bringing our articles that represent ourselves. Each one of them are putting them on the table in front of the family's name.
I had brought my own beer.
Is there anywhere you want to sit? Or is it?
This is the dining room. Yeah, people are getting ready to have punch and waiting for the rest to come. The articles each of the families brought. Jansen's, Adams, Carlson, Nyharts, Karsted's. Now Lois isn't here yet. There's the Sullivans. Gibsons. Pagels. The Captains. McEldownings. Zumhoffs.
Put the plant up there.
Found out stuff on the Christian book.
Yeah, I got that thing in the middle of the same one.
Oh, well, this guy's like a custard.
So they play tomorrow night?
Sundays they'll play.
Well, they've
1
got,
o'clock.
then a one, so what do you get?
These are a couple. Mary and Lori are taking care of the program along with Pam, but I don't see her.
Hey, Bobby.
You're not going to eat it, Lindsay.
Are you going
There's
to,
Tim.
Let's go to Lowe's tomorrow?
What time does that start?
2 o'clock.
No, I should be back by then.
Are you going fishing tomorrow?
Yeah. I get about 5 and get done.
My name is Mary.
I'm Lori, and we are your hosts this evening. We'd like to welcome you guys to the 1992 Karstad reunion.
Before we start the festivities and dinner tonight, I would like to read a story that encompasses all the reasons we have chosen to come together on this special night. There are many, many special thoughts we have about family that we hold in our mind and heart. As a way of honoring these special things today, we hope to move them from our heads and hearts into a place of action where we can see, feel, touch, or smell the uniqueness of our family. First of all, as the early American Indians did in their ceremonies, we will honor the 4 directions of our lives: north, south, east, and west. As we face the north, we feel the living presence of God and His wisdom. We think of the Karstad ancestors that came from the north and braved their way to America. We think of their courage and strength that helped them become citizens of a new land. We think of those family members who have traveled here from the north and still remain close to the roots of what those immigrants found when they came to America. As we face the south, we are reminded of our bond to Mother Earth and how much we need to care and love the things of nature and God's wonderful creations. We think of those special family members who came from the south and how glad we are to have them here. As we turn to face the east, we think of waking up to a brilliant dawn and having passed through the darkness of our lives. We thank those who have come to be with us who live in the east, with whom we wish we could be together more often. And finally, as we turn to face the west, we come face to face, fully illuminated by the power and color of a sunset. We thank the host families of the West for their kindness and generosity. We realize how important it is for us as a family to stick together in order for our colorful talents and personalities to shine. Now, before we eat, Lori's going to say grace for us.
We're going to start with something a little different, and then we're going to go into Come Lord Jesus, something that we all know, that we all know. Of the Father's love begotten, ere the worlds began to be, He is Alpha and Omega, He the source, the ending, He of the things that are that have been, and that future years shall see, evermore and evermore. Amen. Come Lord Jesus, be our guest. To remind young people of their ancestors' hardships. Thanks to a worldwide improvement in the standard of living, these indigestible ethnic standards are now generally served only in festive occasions where wine and good cheer of friends lowers everyone's critical faculties. It takes a lot of peer support or peer pressure to force people to eat these things nowadays. Lutefisk is the penitential food of the Scandinavians. Undoubtedly developed during a period of cruel famine, lutefisk is caught fish dried in racks in the icy Nordic air and then soaked in lye, a major constituent of Drano and old-fashioned homemade soap. Preserving lutefisk in lye probably did prevent it from spoiling, although it's hard to tell with lutefisk. While it's understandable that our poor, starving ancestors ate lutefisk to stay alive throughout the long, hungry Nordic winters, it's a cruel mystery why the immigrants brought it with them when they moved to the land of milk and honey. Our ancestors came to America to escape religious persecution, to escape the draft, and perhaps a few to escape the law. What they should have been trying to escape was lutefisk. But really, what the immigrants wanted was a reminder of how terrible conditions were back home. They needed to be reminded that no matter how bad the weather got in Minnesota, life was still better here than back in Scandinavia, where they would be forced by dire necessity to eat lutefisk daily. Popular songs flooded the steamships, bringing the immigrants to America. These songs were secretly commissioned and printed by the steamship companies themselves, who saw the containerized export of bulk lutefisk as the wave of the future, capable of profitability, filling their ships after every last Scandinavian had been found and shipped to America. The songs were openly manipulative and sentimental, and strong men wept when singing favorites like "Kan du glömma lutefisk?" Can you forget your old lutefisk? Or your old mother's waiting by her lutefisk pot. After nostalgia for lutefisk started losing its grip, the lutefisk lobby began a new campaign stressing the macho aspects of eating something so disagreeable. The macho approach dovetailed nicely with the National Lutheran dedicated to duty and personal responsibility. Huge posters were spread all over the Seven Corners area of Minneapolis. Lutefisk, it's a rotten job, but somebody's got to do it for your family, was the main theme of the campaign. Eventually, reality reasserted itself, and the whole campaign just fell apart when the makers of a tuna hot dish mix put up posters depicting a Christmas feast disrupted by nausea after the lutefisk was passed around. Now, lutefisk is making another comeback. Another generation is proving that those who do not remember history are condemned to re-eat it. We have forgotten our grandfather's stories of biting into a chunk of unwashed lye during Christmas dinner. We are lulled by the claims of the new lutefisk lobby, neo-lutefiskians as they are known, that lye is no longer used in the manufacture of lutefisk. Caustic soda is the new agent. Lutefisk qualities are hard to describe. Let's all clear our throats. Let me start that again. Lutefisk qualities are hard to describe in mere words, at least in decent words. It's surprising that the word lutefisk hasn't been an expletive itself, considering how often one reverts to vulgar and base language to describe the experience of eating it. Lutefisk has been compared with Jell-O, but its texture is more like what I think a jellyfish would feel like as it slithered over my mouth. Its odor lacks the clean sharpness of freshly caught fish, yet somehow it also lacks the definitive bouquet of truly spoiled fish. There's a story here also that I guess a Scandinavian family had written, and it goes like this. My mother used only one special kettle for boiling lutefisk. She bought it cheap at a garage sale and thus had no qualms about ruining it. She refused to cook anything else in it, claiming that the lutefisk oil or aura or karma or something had so permeated that kettle that it was unfit for any other culinary purpose. When my father, the only voluntary lutefisk eater in the house, died, not too long after eating lutefisk, incidentally, my mother converted the kettle into a flower pot. Nothing ever grew in it. I'm not impressed with the argument that consenting adults and minors accompanied by their parents ought to be free to choose to eat lutefisk in private. There is a difference between liberty and license, between freedom and anarchy, and between decent foodstuffs and lutefisk. In proper society, there are limits, and if there aren't, then there ought to be some. Perhaps what we need are self-help therapy groups, such as Lutefisk Anonymous for the caustic soda dependent, or Lutanon for those who are not personally addicted but who play a codependent role in providing our weaker friends and relatives fresh supplies of this evil stuff. It's time we stop thinking of this dangerous substance as a test of our courage or a public proof of what ordeals we will endure to prove our membership into the Scandinavian American gang. We need to bring some of our vaunted Nordic rationality to bear on this problem and rid ourselves of this monkey or fish off our backs. Thank you, and that's the end of that story. It's called The Mystique of Ludicrous. Thank you, and hopefully they're going to be out with the dinner. And we passed out some questions to the sisters and also Dick.
When Mom was in high school, she liked to do little tricks and things during the noon hour. And one day, she and some other kids had an old Model T Ford that somehow or other you could duck down and see through the hood some way without anybody seeing who was driving, or whether or not there was anybody driving. So there they were. This Model T Ford was running down Main Street of Nicollet, and nobody was driving. And then I think of a story about my dad. I always think of him as having lived probably 25 years before his time. The fact that he grew up in a family of girls and then having 6 daughters of his own probably had him sort of trained to realize that women were worth just as much as men were. He always used to tell us that we could be anything and do anything we wanted to be, and never to depend on anybody to take care of us. So most all of us have gone on to school and done something in which we could take care of ourselves in case we had to. So I really thank him for that.
Let's tell a story about Donna May. And then I have to tell a story about Grandma and Grandpa. I didn't know Donna May very well when I was growing up, because when she left home, what, 13, 14, go to St. Peter? But she wasn't home when she was going to high school. And so I didn't know her real well, but I do remember, I think all of you know that Donna May has more patience than anybody in this entire room. And I remember one time I went to her house, and Joan and Jean were babies, and Julie was a little bit older. And Donna May had to do a lot of work with rashers and make all kinds of meals. And Jean and Joan were hanging on her leg, and they were crying, and Julie wanted something else, and she was kind of whining and doing, and here Donna May was just whipping up this cake and put it in the oven, dragging 2 kids over to the oven, or dragging back, and I thought, man, if I could have patience like that, and that always seemed to impress me, Donna May. I don't know why, but Donna May probably has the most patience of any of us. Story about my father. As you know, our family did not show a lot of physical love. We did not hug, we did not kiss, we did not, and my father didn't either, but I always knew my father loved me, and I always knew when he was very happy, because he'd either squeeze my arm or he would have this twinkle in his eye. But he always seemed to give us that message that he was very, very pleased. And my mother, I think you all know, my mother and I did not really see eye to eye. But I did put that all to rest one time, because I thought, here's a woman who is the only child in the family. When she was born, she was 40. Her father was 40, and I think her mother was 38 or something like that. And she was the only child, and she did not know how to do beans. She did not know how to cook, sew, take care of children, nothing. And she married into this family
with 5 women who knew how to do everything. Now, just that in itself would make me go crazy. So I really realized what my mother went through. And the other thing, too, is that when she was married, she had 4 children, I think, in 5 years. And of course, that in itself would make me go crazy. But after reflecting on my mom and what she went through and what she had to do and all the things she taught us, and I think our cooking probably was one of the biggest things, and our sewing. But I finally discovered that my mother had reasons for being sometimes the way she was, and you can make your own decision on what that means. But we did have very good parents. And we have the 7 children of us are very wonderful, and we have wonderful nieces and nephews and wonderful grand nieces and nephews, and I love you all, and I'm so glad that you're here.
For the rest of the people that come up, make sure you move the microphone because it's pretty tough to hear. Donna Mae, would you like to come up now?
I have to tell about Marlene. She was one of the more gullible sisters, and she had one sister in particular who liked to have her do things that turned out to be a little disastrous. And we had an old chicken coop that had a tin roof, and one day Lois was up. Lois is the other sister, by the way. Lois was up on the roof, and I'll have to tell a story about Lois. And this is about Lois, isn't it? Right. Yeah. Okay, well, Marlene is involved. But Marlene is the one that really got the bad end. Lois was up on the roof of this chicken coop, and there was a little hole cut in the top right on the ridge of this chicken coop. And she asked Marlene to come up there one time, to come up and, you know, just to sit up there. You can see so much better from up there. And so she got her up there, and unbeknownst to Marlene, there was a beehive built right into that hole in the roof. And Marlene got stung very badly and got quite sick. I don't know if Lois ever regretted that or not. But anyway, it was a little story about Lois. And the only one thing I can think about my mother, she always, you know, liked to delegate work to people, and whenever she wanted us to do anything, and if we didn't do it right away, she never told us more than once. Like wash the dishes, and if we wouldn't do it within, say, 2, 3, 4 minutes, she would start doing it herself. And of course, that made us go quick do it, and we felt, you know, kind of guilty about not doing it, but that was her way of getting us to do what we were supposed to do. I have to tell a story on Dick. I had no problem. And you girls remember the gift that always was given the day you graduated from high school? A watch. Well, Dick got a watch for confirmation. And I was so mad at Mother. I said, Dick is so irresponsible. He will never, that watch will be broken. It was a pocket watch. That watch is going to be broken in about 3 days. And he was only supposed to use it on Sunday. So this one day we were milking cows, and he comes down, and remember the little calf pen right by the milk house? There was that little calf pen, and then there was the cow stood right there. Well, he was trying to sneak by there, and then he had his back to the cow and is facing the pen, and the cow stepped over and smashed his pocket against the board and squashed his watch in a million pieces. So I went to Mother and I said, see? What did I tell you?
It's a little that sturdy.
And then I really loved Dad, but he had two things about him that I absolutely hated. And most of the time, we always had to take turns in the morning milking cows, and sometimes he would always forget, and we'd remind him the night before, now remember, tomorrow morning it's Lois's turn, or remember, it's Donna Mae's turn. And sometimes he'd forget, and he wouldn't pick on anybody if he'd forget. It was always me. And so I'd wake up, and then he'd come in, and he'd pinch your nose. And he didn't have the thumb, so it was here, like this, and to wake you up. I hated that, because it always smelled like cigarettes, and it was always gross. And the other thing I hated was if we wanted something, and he was at the table reading the newspaper, and we said, Dad, can we go to town today? Oh, I'll use this for the newspaper. Okay, Lois, you say, Dad, can we go to town today? Other than that, I love my mother and dad.
It's wonderful for the Western contingency here. For the wonderful job that you've done entertaining us. We're trying to stay a little longer, but if someone would like to add up the hours that it took to get here and to fix the meals and pay for the airline tickets and things like that, I think you'd be truly amazed at what we really can do. I have to tell something about Elaine. And this happens when she got married, or was about to be married. And I think this is probably all very close in our minds because how long have you been married now? 20 years? 22 years, okay. When Mom, especially, and that kind of surprised me, but I didn't really know she was a racist or whatever you want to say, but when she found out that she was going to marry a Catholic, I tell you, whatever hit the fan. And she was not going to come to the wedding. I mean, you know, Lenore marrying Howard was no big deal, and that surprised me more yet, you know. But when she found out that there was going to be a Catholic in the family, it just, that was something almost unheard of. But of course, you all know she relented, and she dearly loved those children. In fact, I'm not sure how many times she got to Green Bay, but she came whenever she could. And so all is well that ends well. And something about Dad, he had a very sadistic way of showing his affection. I think that's what it was. Remember when he used to pinch Mom? I mean, she would go straight up the wall. She had such a low pain threshold, you know, that he would pinch her right under the small of the arm, you know, right here, you know, really hurt. Remember that? And Mom, I'm sure, just hated it, you know, but she would jump, foot off the ground, but Dad, I'm sure he just could, you know, chuckle under his bed, but he loved to do that kind of thing, and I'm sure he meant no harm, but it was a little disconcerting to Mother, nevertheless. Thank you all for all the wonderful times we've had.
Story about Lenora. And I think every family has one. Has a Lenore. Can all of you understand what I'm saying? When you think about in your own immediate family, you have a Lenore in your family. And she's unique in many ways. And what can I say? The thing I like about Lenore the most is getting letters from her. How many of you see a letter from Lenore in the mailbox and you get your cup of coffee and you sit down and you say, okay, I'm ready for a good laugh. Well, the one letter I remember getting one time when Christopher and Sean were little. And Lenore is a person who wants to do what she wants to do when she wants to do it. And so now she has these two little children that demand attention and all this sort of thing. And so this letter came in the mail and she said, well, just got up this morning and just got through cleaning up Chris and Sean's mess. They just gotten in the refrigerator into a pound of bacon and laid it end to end across the kitchen floor into the living room. And I thought, my God, she can't even afford toys for her children. I don't know, you guys like to get up in the morning and horse around in the kitchen. That was more than one story I remember about, right? Right? Okay. Let's see. Story about Mother and Dad. Let's see, what can I think of here? Let me think. I had something in my head and now it completely escapes my mind. As you know, there's a big brown and white cow issue at this reunion. I don't know if all of the Californians heard about it or not, but they were going to put a black and white cow on their t-shirts. Yes. And of all people, it came from Lenore, the horrendous protest of letters, phone calls, and, you know, displeasure with that choice, so they finally changed it. But what Grandpa was very proud of his brown and white cows, and it was, and they're called Guernseys, for those of you who want to get into the technical aspects of the breed. They were purebred Guernseys, and he liked everybody to know that. And I remember him sketching, because for every animal, if you wanted a purebred, you had to fill out this form, and you had to sketch the spots on the cow so that that cow had a specific configuration, and it was filed in New Hampshire somewhere. So he would have to go sketch the spots on the cows, and I always remember he was very proud of his animals. And he was a really neat guy. I wish he could be here.
And Lenore.
The last person. I'm supposed to tell a story about men, and I wish they had given me a chance to tell you a story about Mars. I have lots of stories, and I will stay afterward for anybody. Here are some of the stories. In fact, I can tell some now if you want me to, Mars. No. She almost let her boyfriend freeze to death in the cold car one summer. That gives you an idea of the kind of stories. And his name was Harlan Ergang. And he was Catholic. Yeah, and I'm listening to what everybody is saying, and I'll keep this as short as I can, but I get to talking, and maybe that's why you put me last, because But Elaine said there's one in every family, and I just want to make a comment that in our family it's Sean, because I'm sure that the bacon incident was not the rest of us idea. Sean's idea. I'm supposed to tell a story about men, and I had to go outside and really think about that, because I have heard stories about men, but I don't have any funny first-hand stories. I remember with great fond memories going to visit Mim and Kurt when they lived in Laverne. It was a big deal for me to go and stay with Mim and Kurt for a period of time. So I have a lot of fond memories of that. I guess what you hear is kind of a theme here is the strength of the Karsten family. I think what some of us are realizing is that the strength sometimes does not serve us well. We probably tolerate some things that we should not tolerate longer than we should. But I think that Mim, I'm not sure all of you are aware that she had polio. She lost a child when he was very young, and she had polio. She, I think all of us have suffered some slings and arrows that she has endured. And one of the things that when she had polio, and she was in Sister Kenny Institute for a year, that's no small thing to persevere and endure those kinds of things. So I think the other thing is that you get a taste of what Mim is like on the other side of the coin by the kind of story she told about Dick. Mim is kind of like, see, I told you so kind of person in a way.
And you fed her all the info, huh?
Now, when it comes to Mom and Dad, I guess that I was sitting back there thinking about this, and it brought tears to my eyes just thinking about it. And I think all of us sisters have talked about Mom, for one thing, and the manner in which she really rose to the occasion. And one of the saddest things that we talk about is the fact that she never gave herself credit for a lot of things. She was a person who tended to look at the downside of life and how much she had not done and should have done differently, as opposed to the kinds of things that she did do. She was a wonderful mother with, every parent has their edges and things that we don't like about them. She was a wonderful mother. She was a wonderful neighbor. She was a really smart, a bright person, and I wish she were able to be here tonight. I gave her a really hard time, but I think I got a great deal. They tell horror stories about the fact that they found Mother crying in the basement steps because of some smart aleck statement I made to her. And I cringe now when I think of it. She would have had it. And when we talked about some things after I got older, and she knew only after the fact what she should have said to me, to shut my face up. But she gave me a great deal. Now, Dad, just thinking about Dad brings tears to my eyes because he was a wonderful dad. He was very, very proud of his daughters and sons. And I was telling John that when I sat down to write the note about the cow issue, all those memories of being in 4-H and when I was younger and came flooding back, and the immense pride he had and the great glee he took in this whole Holstein Guernsey competition. I mean, he really got into it. But I think my one single fondest memory was of when we were sick. He, sitting on his lap, he didn't do any housework, he didn't do any cooking, he didn't like that, and would starve to death before he would fix himself something except a month-old Fig Newton and some cold coffee. But he really, he was a very nurturing parent in his own way, and I think the pinching thing was his way of showing affection. And I lost my train of thought here. But he would enjoy being here. I guess the other thing is that in the men in this room, the sons and the cousins and their children, there's a great deal of Mom Karstedt in all of us. Some of the worst of what she was and the best of what she was. And in the men, there's some of I see Dad Karstedt in a lot of the men in this room. And I'm sure he's having a good time watching over us. Thanks.
Presentation, we need to call little Bob up here. He has a special, are you ready to come on up?
Whatever.
Special presentation, yeah, whatever, Okay. And
Little Bob?
here he goes.